Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today I will present the early practices of Islamic administrations. Week 6. Administrations under the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to understand the Islamic administration in the early stage of development, we need to have some idea of the social and political conditions of pre-Islamic Arab. This practical year is refers to in Islam as al-Jahiliyyah, or the age of ignorance, in the contract to Islamic era, which is age of enlightenment and knowledge. The Arab, the Arab of Jahiliyyah were divided into large groups who who dwelled in the desert and who were settled in the cities, towns, and villages. Okay, there are two types: the people who live in the desert, the from were from Badia, who largely inhabit centralized Arabic, remote from the place to place. They moved from place to place looking for the best pastures for their camels or sheep and horses. They had no specific home, living anywhere that pasture and water were implied. The, the average members of the group was simply in his daily life strongly brave and hospitable. He dwelled in his only camels to feed guests, the poor, or the helpless. He was always more perspective to give than the receive. For the city and the towns and the village, they settled through the Arabic principle. They were much more advanced in the civilization that they are counterpart. They were accommodated in the agriculture and businesses, and they used to conduct two annual trade trips. Their carnivals were sent out regularly to Yemen and South Arab on the winters, and to achieve cities and towns in the Palestine and Syria in the summer. A characteristic of the administrations of the Prophet period. Administration of the Prophet was the simplest and easy, with which administrative affairs were conducted. There are no office or officials who serve as a career governmental or paid employees. The state of the society then did require them. The mosque was the center of all religious, social, and political activities. The Prophet recite, lead the prayers, give the ceremony, and advise, meet the visitors and the foreigners, diplomatic discussion with his friends and companions, the affair of the communicated and wrote and dispatch letters to contemporary kings, emperor, and the other head of the state. The first important administrative decisions made by the Prophet was the planning and the exhausting of an immigration plan for his early followers to uh, Al-Habash, Abaisi. The second most important discussion was that planning, organizing, and administration the greeting immigrations hijrah from Mecca to Medina in the year of first 662. Through the Prophet was the head of the Muslims community, and his orders were always obeyed by his followers. He nevertheless consulted his companion to help him reli- religious, political, and administrative affairs. He had wazir and ministers as well as secre- secretaries and officials, writers of his letters to foreigner rulers. Public servants under the administration of the Prophet Muhammad in Medina. First of all, they have al-wali, which is the governmental. His job is to educate the peoples and teach them the new faith, establish law and orders, arrange from the administration of justice, uh, be in the charge of the governmental and administration in their simple form. The qualification of the wali were pay justice, knowledge of the Islam, and honest. The second part is al-amil, which is the tax collection, to collect the zakah, poor tax, and sadaqah for the from the Muslims of his specific region. Collect the jizya, which is the capitalism's tax from the non-Muslims who live under the Islamic domain and enjoy it, its protections. The third part is al-qadi, which is the judge. The judge's task was to dispense justice. He used the independence of the government and the responsible directed to the Prophet, the chief of justice of the Islamic state in the capital city of Medina. The qualification for the legal post were very strict. The prospective judge had to be an uh, eminent scholars will versed in the law as well as par- uh, be by just just upright, God-fearing, intelligence, and having good judgment. Ali bin Abi Talib, who became the fourth Khalifa of Islam, and Mu'adh bin Jabal were among the judges who were appointed by the Prophet to different provinces. Arab at that time was divided into province. The province of Al-Medina, uh, Tamima, Al-Janat, the regions of the Banu Kanda, Mecca, uh, Najran, Al-Yemen, Hadramaut, Oman, and Bahrain. The Wali, Al-Amil, and the Qadi were directly responsible to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet always used the principles of accountability and check and balance to oversee the revenues and expenditures of the province as well as the officially who administrated them. Example, he once appointed a person as a tax collector to one of his regions when Amil uh, when the Amir returned. He told the Prophet that some of the revenue was given to him as a gift from the various persons. Prophet Prophet did not have any department finance or or treasure to take care of the revenue of expenditures in addition to the poor tax, voluntary العامل and capitalism tax. The source of the revenue were the land tax, خراج, state land revenue fee, and the spoil of war, which is غنيمة. The expenditures were of the numerous type of rending from the building dams and improving land to distributions of the fund among the total population to a specific allowance for the poor, needy, sick, aged, uh, handicaps, and orphans. All these activities were administered by the simple method with the help of the companions of the Prophet. The mosque was usually the center of much of the activities con- concerned with the distributions of funds, which constantly a large portions of the expenditures. The Prophet had no specific military armed department. All, all matters of the re, uh, recruiting, arming, provisions, care, and the command of the whole of the Muslims army were visited in the Prophet himself. During his leaderships and the missionary life, he was the commander in the chief of Muslims in the Medina. The Prophet usually lead the battles against his enemy, although, although a few times he select the leaders for his task. Such administration was mainly constructive, open the Sharia principles and widely based upon the religious awareness and human consultation of the individual. Administration happened the Khulafa period. Khulafa, Khulafa period, the period of the Prophecy Khulafa began with the death of the Prophet in 632 and ended with the assassinations of Ali bin Abi Talib, the fourth Khalifa of Islam in 661. Khulafa al-Rashidin, which is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Umar bin Khattab, Uthman bin Affan, and Ali bin Abi Talib. At Abu Bakr period, uh, administration under the first Khalifa Abu Bakr lasted only above 2 years. It follows closely with the patterns of the Prophet. Few in any innovations in the kind of kingdom of administration can be attributed to Abu Bakr. Rather, he is viewed by the historian as a strict followers and imitators of the Prophet, not an innovator. Innovators. Al-Kandi quoted in, for example, tell us that the Abu Bakr, like the Prophet, practices accountability to the fullest extent. He even designed one of his companions, Abu Ubaidah, to help him in his task. When one of his governors, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, came from the Yemen, Abu Bakr made him accountability for every items responsible to him in as incomes and expense. The Khulafa handled these matters personally since the demands for the such purpose were not uh, established until the administration of the second Khalifa, Umar bin Khattab. The second Khalifa is considered the greater grandfather of Islamic administrations and most popular individuals in the history of Islamic next to Prophet and Abu Bakr. Omar founded the earlier Islamic State and was one of the builders of Islamic civilization. He, cons- he conquered such ancestral kingdoms of the east and west of the Euphrates and the part of the Roman Basin. Umar administration was characterized by innovations and reform. It also incorporated concepts which require as new present-day administrative theory and practices. Till now, Umar radiallahu anhu consulted, instituted, and encouraged the democratic method in Islamic administration government. Khalifa instructed the people of the Khulafa and the Basar cities in Iraq and Syria to select an honest and re- reliable individual for the positions of tax collections. They turn in the name of the can- candidate to him. Then after the interview them, he will he he with the approval of the counseling of the adverse appointment appointed each man as a tax against to his district. Umar tried to select and appoint pious, capable, and trustworthy men to key positions administration. He used a procedure of testing their abilities by the temporary appointment for the 2 or 3 months, followed by their permanent appointment or the recalls, depended upon their behavior, actions, and and competence. Moreover, prior to appointment, he usually consults his adv- advisors, counsel, as well as the people of the province or the city to which the officially would be appointed. In fact, the institutions of the Sayur was recognized as a part and parallel of the Islamic State in all aspects of the government and administration. Umar was the first Muslim rulers in the early Islamic State in innovation, adopt and or introduct followers reform in the governmental and administration. First of all, he established night patrol, as you say, the police al-shurta with its call Sahib al-Ahdath and the institution of the his path headed by an officer known Muhaddis to mentions law and other in the mar- marketables, the tacit work along the police officer, but was independent of him. Second, he established barriers. Also, the first rulers in the Islam to introduce exiles as the punishment. First, he established a special office for the investigations complaint that reached the Khalifa. He appointed every reliable and trustworthy person to this post. He also established the land surveying for the tax purpose al- and Diwan al-Khiraj or the Department of the Land Tax. He established an office guest house in the Medina and Kufa in the province of the Iraq. Seven, he introduced an annual conference in the Medina where all government and tax collected, judged, and other state officials got together at that time of the pilgrimage, the Khalifa in the public assembly ward. Eight, he established the Beit al al Mul al Amil or the treacherous house on the suggestion of the commoner who was aware of such an institution in other nations. The last one, he adopted the Islamic calendar, which began with the Hijrah, immigrant of the Prophet, as the officially calendar of the new Islamic State. The year learn, the year lunar and has 354 days. This list of the reforms is not exhaustive, but rather uh, representative of the Umar's importance contributed to the Islam administration. Umar appointed the following new officials: Kutab, Chief Secretary, who usually accommodate the Wali, uh, Katib at Diwan, a chief of the secret of the revenue and the arms selectors, uh, Sahib al-Hadid, officer of the policy, Sahib al-Bay al-Amil, trustees. Omar policy was to pay state officials high salaries. Administrations of the justice. Omar appointed only the most qualified uh, scholars to the post of the judge, as he was gifted with the remarkable appointment for the recognizing uh, recognizing people's wealth. But even uh, re, after the re, but after the recurse realitable individual, he had to take appointment decisions to the member of the consultative assemblies between the finalizing his decision. Characteristic of the administration of Khalifa Osman: the fundamental of the overseeing the state affair to be threefold. First of all, retain the trust, authorities, and power, ruling according to the laws of God. The policy of the financial administration in the three steps: collect it rightfully, spend it rightfully, and prevent dealing with the war wrongfully. Development of the Diwan. Diwan Al-Junaid, Department of Financial Operations and Tax. They introduced in 641. It responsible for the collecting revenue from the taxing, managing the royal incomes and expenditures, the acting as the paymasters of the poli- soldiers. Diwan al-Insha challenge to keep all the officially document of the government, to increase the number of the officially document, require a department for their maintenance. In the last year of the administration, the Diwan al-Insha become a sophisticated organ that deal with the aspect. Department Waqf means the consisting of the ad, dar ad-diqa, the floor houses, the to help the poor and the needy. Umar gave up some of his land for this purpose and directed in his will that all income from that land would go directly to charitable foundations fund. Uthman bin Affan and an old man when the succeed Umar. Uthman followed in the Umar footsteps in the conduct of the governmental and administration until he become too old and weak to supervise his aides and governors. Consequent, the governor and the public officials act as they please, and the administration become loose in the last year of his reigns. Uthman not was not creative Khalifa. He was considered by the major majority of the Muslim followers of his predecessor, even though even though the compelling against him by some was that this was the precise what he did not do. Ali bin Abi Talib, he he is the cousin of the Prophet, was the fourth Khalifa. The unfortunately civil war among the Muslims uh, captures his attentions and to, took more of his time than did government and administration. His letter to the governor of Egypt, which reflect his philosophy of administration, political justice, public service, and so forth. Development of the Islamic administrations. Islamic administration institutions development. Many institutions were established during the early administration of the Islam. These include the institution of Khalifa, institution of the Wazir, ministers, the institution of the Wali, governor of the province, the, the Diwan. There are also were control board or the institutions known as the Hizb, Hizbah or market inspectors and ma- Mazalim investigations or the grievance. The Diwan secretaries. Diwan was the volleyball's structural organization at that time, established to perform general and specific function of the governmental administration. The following divans are illustrated. Diwan al-Khiraj, Diwan al-Junaid, Diwan al-Khatim. This is all the diwan. The following new diwan were created by the early al-Habasha in 750 to 870. Diwan al-Musad and Diwan al-Azmiya, Diwan al-Riqqa, Diwan al-Mazalim, Mazalim, Diwan al-Sawat, Diwan al-Nafaqa, Diwan al-Adiyya, and Diwan al-Syria, uh, Sisera, Diwan al-Ard. This is the end, so thank you very much for the listening.